The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time was released in 1998, 3 years after I was released. Being a 3-year-old toddler, I didn't end up playing Ocarina of Time until I was much older. But play it I did. I played it the year that Uncharted 2 released. I had played a lot of great games since Ocarina's release, including Uncharted 2. So I was worried that it might not hold up after so long, considering the fact that it was a Nintendo 64 game, and boy did it look like one. But my worries were more than unfounded, as Ocarina of Time was and is a phenomenal, soaring achievement for video games. It is a vibrant, endlessly polished, endlessly fun adventure of a lifetime. So many unique and compelling characters, magical locales to visit, and epic stories that you get to be the center of. It was and still is a monumental release, a landmark title that has easily stood the test of time. Ocarina's focus on time travel and essentially 2 Hyrules, one peaceful, full of childlike wonder and blissful ignorance, and the other a dark and grim consequence born of that ignorance, is an extremely interesting idea from a thematic standpoint and from a gameplay perspective as well. Though, when considering the entire series, you'll find that this idea isn't wholly unique to Ocarina of Time. In fact, it was A Link to the Past that had already tackled this concept 7 years prior. Funny coincidence, maybe. A Link to the Past's take on this was the Dark World, a corrupted incarnation of the Sacred Realm that is essentially a dark, mirrored version of Hyrule. This is your glimpse of the future should you fail in your quest, should Ganon prevail and achieve dominion over the land of Hyrule. Whereas the beginning of the game is rather forgiving, the Dark World features more complex and, by extension, more difficult dungeons, a more segmented world where traversal across it is a puzzle in and of itself, and every enemy and every boss packs a way bigger punch. It's smart, it's fun, and it makes for a game that is overwhelmingly rewarding to complete. Fast forward to Ocarina of Time, and its changes to the alternate future Hyrule aren't nearly as pronounced. Much like actual adulthood, the changes won't always come in the form of physical alterations to the world, but more so in the way that you actually navigate and perceive that world as an adult. The people you remember being figures of authority or a saving grace in your time of need are now on equal footing with you, and oftentimes will now count on you and you alone to save them. A child on their own can't take on all the problems of the world, but an adult, whether they want to or not, might have to. How would that affect someone like Link, who had to grow up in a single day? And therein lies a potential problem with Ocarina of Time. It's the motivations or the agency of Link. Though the vast majority aren't bothered, I can understand how some may take issue with this. Link is not really much of a character in Ocarina of Time. There's a reason that the game asks you to enter your name at the beginning. This is more so your story than it is Link's. He's really just your vessel to enter the world of Hyrule. He doesn't make his own decisions. His goals and motivations aren't ever his own. He pretty much just does as he's told. And when big things are happening in regards to Ocarina of Time's plot, Link can only ever have one of 2 reactions: calm or shock. Link does not once smile or show sadness in this game. The hero of time is a total sociopath. Not like this is anything new, as every previous installment of this series had the exact same type of protagonist. That worked well for this style of game, because here, Link doesn't really need to be a character with complex emotions or motivations, but his actions, i.e. your actions, still need to drive the story forward. But whether or not this translates well to a fully 3D cinematic adventure game is up to your own interpretation. And all of this sort of holds a magnifying glass to the metaphor of adulthood and predetermined destinies in Ocarina of Time being pretty heavy-handed. A protagonist with the ability to show real human emotion can help to more effectively flesh out and convey the themes of a story to the player when the protagonist themselves is affected by them. You feel what they feel, because for the last few hours, this sword-wielding white boy with questionable fashion sense has been you. I wouldn't agree either way in the case of Ocarina of Time. Personally, I can look past it, because it's more about the world and the overall journey that's more important to me in this instance. But I believe that there is a way to have your cake and eat it too. When I was about 9 or 10, I went to this McDonald's with my mom. Inside this McDonald's, they had one of those GameCube kiosks. You know, the ones that had like 4 sides to it, bunch of multiplayer games, Kirby Air Ride, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Party 4, 5, 6, and whatever other ones were on the GameCube. A lot of that stuff. So you could just play games with other kids while your parents were ordering you food or talking with their friends. But for some reason, this McDonald's specifically had one single-player game, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. Kind of a weird place to have your first real exposure to the Legend of Zelda series, but it was inside this McDonald's that I first fell in love with the cel-shaded splendor of The Wind Waker. The farthest anyone had gotten on that particular save file was Outset Island, so like the very beginning of the game. But that was all I needed. I combed every inch of that island, talked to everyone. My mind reeled over how to get past the trees on the hill, what the giant head on the cliff was holding, how I could get up to the forest on the mountaintop. But more than anything, I tried to imagine what those silhouettes of distant islands on the horizon were really like. I used the telescope to get a clearer look at them. I tried swimming to them multiple times. I looked off onto the horizon for so long, wishing I could sail away. I couldn't get those far-off islands out of my mind. I loved the design of the islanders, the way the grass swayed in the wind, the lines of foam as waves washed up onto the sand, and I just adored those cel-shaded visuals. The vibrant colors, the puffy clouds and deep blue skies, the lines of wind dancing over the open sea. With just this starting area alone, Wind Waker had completely sold me on its whole vibe. And it was just a few weeks later that I got my own copy to finally experience everything that the Wind Waker had to show me. But the Wind Waker doesn't start with Outset Island. Not really. It begins with a tapestry, retelling the tale of the hero of time, how he saved Hyrule in its darkest hour, how he bravely defeated Ganon with all the courage and strength of the greatest heroes, sealing him away forever so that his evil would never again threaten the land of Hyrule. Over time and multiple generations of peace, the people of Hyrule once again fell into that same blissful ignorance that allowed them to be conquered by Ganondorf in the first place. Years pass, and no preparations are ever made to defend themselves from another threat, to protect that golden power that was so coveted by the world. If evil were to ever again return to Hyrule, certainly the hero of time would return to save them, right? Ganondorf had been sealed away forever. Link and the Seven Sages made sure of that. There was no possible way for him to ever come back. They would never even have to entertain the idea. But wouldn't you know it? Starting with this tapestry, explaining the dark history of the old world and then immediately jumping into the bright and cheery setting of Outset Island is more thematically appropriate than you might think. Just look around you. The Great Sea is gorgeous. The bright sun, blue skies, the wide open ocean of deep unending blue and white-capped waves, the wind, the beating heart of every sun-baked island, coursing through the leaves of every tree, every blade of grass, through the streets of every town, and over every mountaintop. And living amongst all this raw natural beauty are the people who call it home. All of them living quiet, humble lives on these tiny little islands. The ocean, dwarfing them in every direction, a constant reminder of the world's enormity and their own small but peaceful existence within it. It's just so blissful and exuberant, even down to the music. The cel-shaded visuals, the cute characters. God, no wonder people thought this was childish. When this game was first unveiled, OG Zelda fans hated it. They thought the art style was too cartoony and too childish. But look at it. Can you blame them? But really, we all know now that those are just the people who didn't bother to look any deeper. This is all very surface level. There are multiple reasons why Nintendo chose this art style for the game's visuals, and one of them was to use it as a veil. All that color, all that cuteness and joy, it's a facade, and one that very effectively conceals all of Wind Waker's darkness. Absolute power, greed, death, and destruction. All of it waiting, sleeping just below the surface. Those distant islands, the silhouettes, they aren't the promise of excitement and adventure I once believed they were. They're something else entirely. Something more sinister. Link doesn't leave home because of his thirst for adventure. That comes secondary to his sister's kidnapping by Ganondorf. It's heartbreaking to lose an innocent child to a great and terrible monster. Link himself is just a boy, no older than 12, and still he runs off into uncertainty to save her. The look on his face when he breaks the news to his grandmother. When he waves goodbye to her, only for her to not wave back. Too overwhelmed with grief to let Link go. Sailing into uncertainty, watching the only home he's ever known fade into the distance. This Link isn't a hero. He's not some courageous adventurer. The emotion he so effectively conveys tells you everything. He's a child, and he's scared. These islands that dot the Great Sea are beautiful indeed, but a high number of them contain dark caves or old temples that are home to vicious monsters, ghosts, or the undead, evils that never sleep. And the ocean surrounding them is no different. The endlessly deep waters of the Great Sea are host to massive bloodthirsty sharks, evil floating heads with grimacing faces, giant squids that drag ships into the depths, and violent tornadoes that can tear you apart. The joyful, colorful art style, the wide open sea calling my name in all directions, the promise of adventure, it was all a lie. Those silhouettes of far-off islands were akin to the light of an anglerfish, drawing me willingly into the jaws of death. And all of these monsters, they, in one way or another, serve Ganondorf. The very same Ganondorf that was forever sealed away in Ocarina of Time, escaped from his prison where he was sealed away by the 7 sages for eternity. His last words, a fanatical declaration of his malice, his evil, and his lust for blood. Someday, when this seal is broken, that is when I will exterminate your descendants. and Ganondorf does make good on this promise. For reasons unknown, the seal that kept Ganondorf imprisoned does indeed break. And when it does, he returns to Hyrule with malice and venom, the likes of which has never been seen before. The Tapestry describing Ganondorf at his most deadly, his most powerful. He no longer wishes just to conquer Hyrule. He's come for its blood. And what are we left with? Hyrule, lost, locked away beneath miles of water, resting undisturbed for centuries, not even the smallest sound echoing through its halls, or across its verdant fields. Dead silence, plaguing every acre of wilderness, every chamber of Hyrule Castle. The scars of Hyrule's violent end lay bare, collecting dust for hundreds of years. This is the scale of the threat we're under. This is the future, should Link fail. The full weight of this death and destruction, the task of stopping another genocide hand-delivered by Ganondorf, is being unfairly forced onto a child by these old evils, as well as the ones who claim to have his best interests at heart. The Great Sea, the dead kingdom that sleeps in a watery grave miles below its waves, and the horrors that lurk around every corner. Don't you see? This isn't a colorful, idyllic paradise. This isn't cartoony or childish. This is hell.
My childhood was about as perfect as it could possibly be. My family didn't ever struggle financially, even during the 2008 recession. Not too many deaths in the family. I had supportive parents. I had mostly great friends. Things were about as good as they could have been. I am incredibly aware of how lucky I was to be able to have the things that I had. How privileged I was to be in that position where everything was pretty ideal. But in a weird contrast to that exceptionally ideal childhood was everything else that I enjoyed. The stories I read, the games I played, the movies I watched, things like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Halo, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. I loved stories of struggle, hard-fought battles, death and destruction, and the brave people who rise above to save the day. Millions of people died in the Human Covenant Wars, and the Flood was an existential threat unlike any other. But Master Chief would always be there to save the day. Up until the last minute, it really did look like Sauron and his endless armies of orcs would truly bring Middle-earth to its knees. But we always knew Frodo would save them in the end. Luke Skywalker lived in a sandstone hut in the desert about 2 hours ago, and now I just watched him destroy the Death Star. All of these stories share the same constants: ruthless antagonists, threats of world-ending proportions, and the heroes who gave everything they could to stop them. Master Chief is just badass. Any one of us could be Spider-Man. If these two could make it all the way to Shell City, get the crown, save the town, and Mr. Krabs, then maybe I could too. It's hard when you're a kid to look at all of that and not want to be them, to long for something greater. I wanted a chance to be a hero. I wanted to be the one to save the day. But I'm just Brian. I'm 10 years old, and I have homework and a bedtime. I never wished for anything bad to happen. Things were perfect. Why the hell would I want that? But I did want maybe an opportunity to feel like I was becoming something bigger than myself. But that comes with a lot of weight. Every kid wants to be Spider-Man. But the great responsibility that comes with that power isn't something that I would wish on anybody. There are, however, certain hardships that don't discriminate. I want to talk with you for a moment about someone that you might be familiar with, a video games reporter from the Washington Post named Gene Park. Park has been reporting on games for quite a while, and is very active on Twitter, posting video game news, critiquing various releases, the occasional meme. In 2022, Park started to get sick. Really sick. He initially thought this was just chronic fatigue or a symptom of long COVID, but before long, he got much worse and became very emaciated. It was later found that he had colon cancer. I still remember watching his announcement. He started it off by saying he had good news and bad news, and that the good news was that he had finally gotten a Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise trucker hat, and the bad news was, you know. It just felt a little weird. It was a little shocking that someone I had seen on Twitter so much as I doom-scrolled through the pandemic was really in trouble. And I remember sitting back and thinking, this isn't just some Kirby Bayonetta profile picture on Twitter. This is a person, and they're fighting for their life. He underwent surgery and countless rounds of chemotherapy, things that take an unimaginable toll on your body, one that leaves you bedridden and really unable to live much of your life in any capacity, other than focusing all of your efforts on survival. How does one cope? What keeps you going on when your entire life hangs in the balance? For Park, it was Cyberpunk 2077.
It helped me embody someone else. My body has betrayed me. My body is trying to kill me. And so, if I can envision myself in someone else's body, it's a transformative experience.
This is what he had to say to Rolling Stone magazine about his experience, about video games being an escape from his pain, an opportunity to be something greater. It's only fitting that Cyberpunk 2077 is also about surviving a body that's trying to kill you. He recalled nights playing through the game all while medical tubes pumped chemicals into his body. He compared it to having poison poured into his heart. After successful chemo treatment and the discovery of another tumor, and further treatment to rid his body of that tumor, Park went into remission. His cancer had reached stage 4, and still, he crushed it. He was dealt one of the worst hands you possibly can be, and still came out on top. It's a story that doesn't always have a very happy ending. When he was asked about beating colon cancer, this is what he had to say.
It sounds like such a cliche for cancer patients to say every day is a gift, but it's true. It's true, you know? And so for me, every time I was alive, I was like, here's another chance to keep fighting.
Throughout Link's journey across the Great Sea, he does encounter quite a bit of hardship and unfairly dealt hands. But what he does with this is kind of unexpected, especially for this series. He fails. He fails a lot. When his sister is kidnapped, he thoughtlessly sprints after her and nearly falls off a cliff. When he first storms the fortress she's being held in, he hesitates, freezes in fear, and is nearly killed after being tossed hundreds of yards out to sea. He's too late and too powerless to save Great Fish Isle from being completely destroyed. When he arrives, he doesn't find the island or its inhabitants. He finds a corpse. His first attempt at confronting Ganondorf ends with him falling to the floor, cowering in fear, as Ganondorf raises his sword to strike Link down, all before he's saved by his friends at the last possible second. Link fails spectacularly to be brave in the face of danger, and can't seem to harness the strength to save the ones he loves. But through determination, sheer force of will, and a bit of help from some friends, he's able to prove to himself and others that he is indeed capable of these feats. He is capable of being the hero they need. And all the while, another story unfolds that beautifully mirrors his own, and one that isn't talked about or praised nearly enough. Near the start of his journey, Link meets a girl named Medli. Medli is a member of the Rito tribe, a race of bird people who live on Dragon Roost Island. The guardian deity of Dragon Roost Island is, you guessed it, a dragon named Valoo, who lives upon the island's tallest peak. And Medli is in the middle of training to become Valoo's attendant. A monumental task indeed. She is very dedicated to this role, as well as her close friend Kamali. You see, Kamali is about to take part in an important rite of passage, one that would see him climb to the highest peak of Dragon Roost Island and speak with Valoo directly, so that he can receive his wings and truly become an adult. Starting to see some similarities? But around the time Link arrives, Valoo becomes angry and violent due to a monster infestation inside the mountain. This leaves Kamali paralyzed with fear, locked in his room, swearing never to come out, never to climb the mountain and obtain his wings. The island is covered by clouds of smoke, being blanketed by smoldering ash drifting like snow from the mountaintop, remnants of Valoo's fiery anger. It's difficult to blame Kamali for being so afraid. Anyone would be. But that's exactly the point. It is terrifying. It is a huge risk. And still, Link himself, in Kamali's place, is able to brave the mountain, defeat the evil within, Ganon, and prove to Kamali through his own actions that having courage, even when we're afraid, is something that we're all capable of. And there it is, a happy ending. Kamali learns to face his fears, Medli, proud as ever, returns to her duties as Valoo's attendant, and everything is as it should be. That is, until Link returns. Link has found the Master Sword, the one thing capable of defeating Ganondorf and saving the world, but it's lost all its power. The blade, as it currently is, does not shine with the power to repel evil. The King of Hyrule, through this boat with a stupid name, tells us plainly, there is only one solution. Find the sages of Earth and Wind, and bring them to their respective temples where they will remain indefinitely, to pray to the gods that they return the power to repel evil back to the Master Sword. And in a shocking, or maybe not so shocking twist, we find that Medli is, unknowingly, one of these sages. So Link travels back to Dragon Roost Island after so much time has passed, only so that he can awaken Medli as the sage she is, the one she always has been. To fulfill her destiny, she'll have to leave everything behind. Her home, the people of her tribe, her duties as an attendant to Valoo, and even Kamali. And in fulfilling her destiny, she might not ever return to the life she once knew. And Medli knows this. As they're about to part ways for what may be the last time, she asks Link to look after Kamali for her, even wondering aloud how he'll remember her when she's gone. The cutscene where Medli awakens as a sage is bittersweet, to say the least. It may be one of the most important moments of the game, as it ties all of the Wind Waker's themes together perfectly. Growing up, leaving home, facing your fears, and being strong for the ones you love, even when you're afraid. Link, too, has come a long way from his humble beginnings on Outset Island. The boy who slept in that lonely lookout tower on the shores of the sea, the one whose childhood was violently ripped away from him, unfairly throwing him into a centuries-old conflict of greed and hatred. His moment, too, comes far beneath the sea. He's traveled to far corners of the world, lent a helping hand to those in need, faced impossible odds, and looked death in the eyes. A true hero in the most unlikely person, hailing from the most unlikely place. Here inside that chamber, in that long-forgotten, broken and dusty kingdom on the bottom of the sea, Link is faced with fate. The Master Sword. The very same Master Sword once wielded by the hero of time. And not just a damage upgrade or a cool throwback, not only the one weapon that can defeat Ganondorf, but a physical manifestation of his unbreakable promise to lay down everything to be the hero that the world needs him to be. His destiny. When Link takes up that sword, he will no longer be that same boy he once was. The past will fade away. He will throw away his childhood to take up the same heavy burden that the hero of time once carried hundreds of years ago. That boy from Outset Island will be gone forever. Don't you see? Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, that moment of taking up the mantle, they're one in the same. The Master Sword was what physically transformed Link, the boy, into an adult, the hero of time. And in Wind Waker, hundreds of years later, it, metaphorically, does the exact same thing. Only this Link can never go back. It is the exact moment that the old Link dies and a new hero is born.
I want to tell you the story about a man named Elisha Mitchell. Elisha Mitchell was a professor and a geologist in the 19th century who taught at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In 1828, he conducted a geological survey of the Black Mountains, a section of the Appalachians. At the time, the highest known mountain in the region was Grandfather Mountain, standing at 5,946 feet tall. But Mitchell thought he noticed another mountain that seemed to be significantly taller. He came back in subsequent years to try to verify that it was indeed taller, after his findings were challenged by North Carolina State Senator Thomas Clingman, who argued that he had actually measured the wrong mountain. Clingman was another mountaineer in the region, and was also a student of Mitchell's at one point. He also served as a general for the Confederacy, or as they're better known today, stupid fucking inbred losers. Clingman didn't believe that Mitchell's mountain was the tallest in the region, no. It was actually, unsurprisingly, a mountain that he himself measured. Mitchell's mountain isn't really a difficult climb when compared to other mountains, but it isn't a cakewalk either. It's a mountain, after all. But regardless, Mitchell once again made the arduous climb and found through new measurements that it was definitively the tallest one. And not only that, it was only 41 feet over Clingman's. Get absolutely wrecked! He had proven that not only was this the tallest mountain in the region, it was the tallest one east of the Rockies. That's incredible. What an amazing hard-fought battle, and kind of an annoying one too. Mitchell summited that mountain over and over again, oftentimes on his hands and knees while he carried his instruments. After winning the dick measuring contest of the century and totally owning Thomas Clingman, Mitchell, exhilarated, broke off from his group and hiked down the mountain alone, as dusk was falling. At around 8 p.m., darkness set in, and a storm descended on the mountain. Disoriented and in a rush to get down to safety, he stumbled over and over again down the mountain until he fell down a 25-foot waterfall. He died on the mountain that night, and more than 160 years later, this mountain where I now stand is named after him. This is Mount Mitchell, the tallest mountain east of the Rockies. And not only that, he's actually buried on the summit. This is him, right next to me.
The Great Sea has reached its final hour, and the conflict to determine the fate of the world is nearly at its end. Ganondorf has regained his full power, kidnapped Zelda, and returned to the ancient land of Hyrule. Link, with the Master Sword in hand, the King of Hyrule, guiding him to this final fight to save the world from evil. After climbing Ganon's tower and battling his strongest opponents yet, Link reaches the top, the wind blasting him from the plains of Hyrule and the cliffs of the Gerudo Valley. There's nowhere left to go. Link confronts Ganondorf, the light of the Great Sea swirling overhead. the ultimate evil who lusts for power and dominion over all, responsible for the destruction and burial of Hyrule. The Demon King himself. And what does he have to say?
My country lay within a vast desert. When the sun rose into the sky, a burning wind punished my lands, searing the world. And when the moon climbed into the dark of night, a frigid gale pierced our homes. No matter when it came, the wind carried the same thing: death. But the winds that blew across the green fields of Hyrule brought something other than suffering and ruin. I coveted that wind, I suppose.
It's easy to forget who this man is, where he comes from. When I look at him, I see hatred. I see a murderer. I see evil incarnate. But I don't see the exact same evil that I did before. Yes, he is a genocidal monster, responsible for the deaths of hundreds, if not thousands. But what I also see is a tired, broken old man, clutching in pain the scars of his past. A man who was born into extreme hardship, fighting to survive in the desert. A man who used his anguish as a weapon, devoting his life to the pain and suffering of others. A man who tasted victory, had it violently ripped away, and was forced to spend centuries in solitude, contemplating his defeat at the bottom of the new world he helped create. This is what his existence has meant. Ganondorf is the greatest threat this world has ever seen, and has brought only death and agony to those around him. But that agony does indeed have an origin, one that came with a choice. Like Link, destiny was not fair to Ganondorf either. I've fought long and hard to be here for this moment, to fight for all that I hold dear. But so has he. The king's wish to bury Hyrule forever, to give the Great Sea a future with what little their ancestors could give them, let the past die, and bury anything and everything that Hyrule ever was or could be, is haunting. He too has had centuries to consider the meaning of his existence. Or in his words, live regretting the past. He has lived bound to Hyrule, and in that sense, was the same as Ganondorf. But now, he has an opportunity to do the right thing, to be something greater. His kingdom, everyone and everything he's ever known, died a long time ago. There's nothing left to hold on to. There will never be true peace. The world can never move on from its violent past until it lets go of it entirely. Hopeful for the future that the children of Hyrule will create for themselves, he uses the Triforce, not for himself, not for his kingdom, not for ultimate power or prosperity, but to bury Hyrule forever, and himself along with it. Wind Waker is a beautiful game, but one that hides so much darkness underneath that beauty. That's one of the things it does best, subverting your expectations. A game that everyone said was too cartoony, too childish. All of it a mask to hide its greed, murder, bloodthirsty monsters, child kidnapping, genocide, price gouging, and all manner of horrors. And somehow, all of that exists within this breathtakingly gorgeous and vibrant world. But is that world enough? Jean Park beat colon cancer and has been in remission for quite some time, which is incredible. But surviving cancer isn't easy either. many cancer survivors are plagued with lifelong disabilities, like dental issues, nerve damage, intestinal problems, infertility, issues with basic motor functions, you name it. And among those physical ailments, survivors of cancer often experience issues that can't be fixed with medication. Studies have shown that more than half of cancer survivors experience some form of survivor's guilt, something that Park had suffered from as well. A plague on the mind that can, in some cases, follow you for life. Cancer and its various treatments can be hell on your body, but often just as difficult on your mind. There are some wounds that just don't always heal. Elisha Mitchell did everything he could to carve out his own destiny in those mountains, and died in pursuit of that greatness, crawling hand and foot thousands of feet to the peak of a mountain that would later be named after him, just to prove that it was the tallest one. All for it to end over the edge of a cliff because of one mistake. But it's still a crazy achievement, right? It's riveting, it's empowering. These are the stories that give life meaning. These are the kinds of amazing things humans were put on this earth to do. That can't all be for nothing. But you know what? Elisha Mitchell was a slave owner. Yeah, he preached that owning slaves was the will of God, claiming that it was no different from owning any other kind of property. He pretty famously called African Americans, quote, a race of inferior moral and mental endowments. Get a load of this guy. We can't even have a nice story about human resilience without some racist piece of shit ruining it. What the fuck's his problem? My point is this. Existence is hard. Life sucks, and it sucks a lot. Navigating adulthood is confusing and difficult. Life can often be cruel and unfair for seemingly no reason at all. And the longer and deeper you look, the more you'll find things that just flat out suck about being alive on this planet. People are horrible to each other. Corporate greed is killing everyday people like you and I. Racism is a plague that seems like it's getting harder and harder to cure every day. There are people who will despise you simply for who you choose to love. Death and disease that ignore the most terrible of people and instead choose to inflict that pain and suffering on those who are wholly undeserving of it. It isn't right. In the case of the Wind Waker, Link should never have had to brave a world this dangerous on his own when he's just a boy. Ganondorf was a major threat to the world, but a child alone should never have to hold the weight of that world on their shoulders. A young boy should never be told that they have to kill a man. It's evil to send someone so young to their death. It is wholly wrong. But taking a step back, we need to take a look at Wind Waker for what it is. A legend of Zelda. The reason that this game is colorful and this one is not. Why Hyrule's topology is different from game to game. And how little details get muddied up all the time is because this is a legend. A story passed down through generations, told by different people over many decades and centuries. Details, small and large, are inevitably going to be changed or lost, kind of like how they forgot how old the Hero of Time was. The team that developed the Wind Waker is not the exact same team of people who developed Ocarina of Time. But the important thing about legends that are passed down like this is that they often have a purpose. A moral that you can take with you into everyday life. And they're usually a lot more metaphorical than they present themselves to be. What is the Legend of the Wind Waker trying to say? The tapestry, the story of the Hero of Time passed down through generations, the tradition of dressing the boys of Outset Island in the hero's clothing the day they reach adulthood. Why? What's the reason? When I became a legal adult, I went to IHOP. I had French toast and Mountain Dew as parts of the same meal, and then I had to register for the draft. It really should be easy to see by now. The legend, the hero, that green tunic is a symbol for everything that you could be and more. Everyone's ability to be greater. Whether you're a boy living on a tiny island afraid to leave home, A girl trying to live up to the greatness of those who came before her. An old man who spent his entire life regretting his mistakes. Or someone battling cancer. There is a reason why this game asks you to enter your name at the beginning. Because this is your story too. We're all capable of great things, no matter who we are or where we come from. Through even the smallest acts, you can cut through all of that darkness and choose to have a positive impact on the lives of those around you and the world at large. You can be the change you want to see in the world, because it's easy to see how badly the world needs it. Planet Earth as we know it is a dangerous and terrible place, filled with violence, hatred, greed, and pure evil. There are people who will take their own chance to be something greater and use that chance for selfish reasons or to inflict pain on their fellow man. But you can choose to be greater. It's that same darkness that makes those moments of light stand out. Lending a helping hand to someone in need, setting a positive example for those around you, loving as hard as you can. These beautiful moments of love and joy, of hope and peace, they make us want to chase that joy even more. This is what makes life worth living. The Great Sea is a land of monsters and darkness, yes. But just look for yourself. In spite of that darkness, it's still a beautiful place. The wide open sea and all the kind souls who live upon it. The raw beauty of the world and those who inhabit it, that's worth fighting for. Destiny found Link on Outset Island and shaped him into the man he was always meant to be. But the storm has passed. The skies are clear. And though it was unfairly asked of him, Link did, in the end, guarantee a future for the world, and one that it can carve its own destiny into. A chance to become anything they wish, move on from the sins of their fathers. That is what Wind Waker is trying to say. This life is yours to live. You chart your own course. You make your own destiny. You don't have to defeat vicious monsters or fight in epic battles against evil. But no matter who you are or where you come from, you can, in some way, change the world. We're all heroes, if we choose to be.